at its expense. China Ministry of Commerce says appeasing the Trump administration cannot bring peace. China has warned countries seeking exemptions from the United States President Donald Trump's tariffs not to strike deals at its expense. Beijing's warnings come as dozens of U.S. trade partners are scrambling to negotiate relief from Trump trade salvos, including steep reciprocal tariffs that have been paused until July. Appeasement cannot bring peace, and compromise will not earn respect, a spokesperson for China Ministry of Commerce said on Monday. Sacrificing others' interests to obtain so-called exemptions for temporary selfish gains is akin to negotiating with a tiger. It ultimately, dude, what is up with the Chinese, man? Every time I hear from a Chinese netizen, it sounds poetic. Every time I hear from the Chinese foreign ministry, it sounds bar for bar like Sun Tzu. Is this normal? Is this how? I don't get it. Is this just how the language works? What is this? It's all idioms across the board. Sacrificing others' interests to obtain so-called exemptions for temporary selfish gains is akin to negotiating with a tiger. It ultimately leads to failure for both parties and harms everyone involved. While China respects countries' efforts to resolve their trade disputes with the U.S., they should also stand on the side of fairness and justice and on the correct side of history. It is particularly important to emphasize that China firmly opposes any party achieving deals at the expense of Chinese interests. Should such a situation arise, China will not accept it and will resolutely take reciprocal countermeasures. This is one of the first instances where I've seen the Chinese government actually take a threatening stance when it comes to trade negotiations or anything really, like saying that if you were to cut deals with the Trump administration and ruin your trade relationship with China in the process, because some of those demands are going to be to not work with China, because America's goal here is to literally decouple all global trade from China as a manufacturing hub, or maybe even potentially the secondary markets that China uses, or secondary manufacturing hubs that China uses. And if that's the case, then they will also retaliate. Now, America retaliating against the world in a belligerent manner is one thing. The ministry issued the statement after Bloomberg News last week reported that the Trump administration intends to push countries seeking relief from its tariffs to reduce their trade with China. U.S. officials are discussing plans to pressure trade partners to stop importing excess goods from China and impose duties on imports from specific countries with those close ties to the Asian giant. Yeah, this is America utilizing what it thinks it has of its global prominence and influence, which I think to a certain degree, America has eroded a lot of that goodwill and a lot of that domination, especially in the last couple of decades. It thinks it can basically bully everybody to also adding tariffs to China. Like, no more Chinese goods entering your markets. Also, you must no longer have any sovereignty whatsoever, and you must engage in deregulation across the board so that you can allow American goods to flow into your country.
Trade deals are the natural.
By the way, something important to understand here is the difference between China and America in this process. China looked to the interest around the globe. They recognized that technology was moving in the direction of batteries and that there was going to be great need for renewable energy in the future, partially because if China were to become anything beyond just the industrial engine, but like a consumer economy or an economy that, or a country that consumes as much as America does, it would collapse. It would destroy everything. The world would no longer exist. And therefore, they focused on beefing up their renewable energy sector. In the process, they started making electric vehicles, seeing that there was great appetite for electric vehicles in all of the global markets. But they didn't make electric vehicles on what they think, what the domestic Chinese market's demands were, with no consideration to what the international markets were looking for. They made electric vehicles, or rather, their regulatory, their own safety measures and their own cars that they were selling domestically, they also abide by standards and needs that the international markets had, as opposed to in the United States of America, where our top-selling car is an F-150, and it is not something you can sell to the European markets. You just can't do it. That is the big difference here. China makes products that people want to purchase. America wants to use its domineering influence around the globe to forcibly sell our products to you. That's it. make better products and people will purchase it. And if you want those products to be affordable, okay, if you want the cost of said products to be competitive with the other country's domestic manufacturing, then subsidize the out of it, which we already do. But don't let those subsidies go back to the pockets of CEOs, but instead make sure that those subsidies go to your workers. This F-150 Canard again, we make small cars too. I know, we make other types of cars as well. I know. I mean, you have the Ford Fiesta, for example.
The S&P has dropped the most under Trump for any president at this point in their presidency since the S&P 500 was in fact created back in 1957. You do not want to be on, the American people don't want to be on, in terms of the drop in the S&P 500 approaching 15% already in his presidency. No bueno.
Yeah, this is base too. Yeah, money. Trump won on making video game titties big. He ran on Oblivion Remaster. Guess what? Shadow dropped Oblivion Remaster. Based. Who cares about anything else? Let it burn. It builds character. I'll grind way harder. Take all of it away. I'll grind harder, chat. Well.
So all of this and the ripple effects from the trade war have a lot of people talking, of course, about a recession coming. Some even saying that we're already in a recession. Where are the numbers on that?
Yeah, okay. So, of course, this is the whole question, right? Is what happens on the New York Stock Exchange, what happens in the NASDAQ, what happens in the S&P 500, stay there, or does it then cascade across the economy? And at this particular point, there's a decent chance that it will cascade across the economy. Chance of a recession. You see, I have 4 different little metrics we can look at. JP Morgan, 60%. Polymarket, 57%. Reuters, 45%. Goldman Sachs, 45%. That's a bunch of numbers on your screen, but they're all basically telling the same exact story. That is, on either side of 50%, there's basically a 50-50 chance of a recession at this point. And that is way up from where we were at the beginning of the Trump presidency, when the numbers simply put weren't anywhere near this. The stock market is a reflection of the economic state we're in. The chance of a recession is
Why the f is there a Polymarket ticker on this, dude? What is going on at this point? How has this become a part of like normal political discourse? Like, that's on CNN, dude. We are such a stupid country. I'm sorry, dude. Holy f. I know I'm supposed to be saying it's based, but like every day I find out something new.
Another reflection of the state of the economy that we are in. The bottom line is that Trump's tariff wars have taken what was a pretty gosh darn good economy and turned into a very uncertain economy, one in which the stock market has fallen and one in which the chance of a recession has gone up considerably, Kate Baldwin.
If there is a recession, how much blame is Donald Trump likely to face?
Okay, so this is the whole thing. Is it, am I going to blame the last guy and I'm trying to fix the economy? Or is it we're going to blame this guy, Donald Trump, and the buck actually stops there? This is what the American folks say. If Donald Trump believes that he can somehow escape blame if there is, in fact, a recession, I'm here for a reality check. He will simply put not be able to do so. Blame Trump if there's a recession in the next 12 months. Look at this. A lot or quite a bit. That's the majority winner right there at 52%. A little or not at all, perhaps a little bit high, some might say, at 32%. But still here, the clear majority of Americans say that if, in fact, there is a recession in the next 12 months, which at this point looks about 50-50, the majority of the American public says that the buck will stop at the White House, stop at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and Donald Trump will not, in fact, be able to escape.
Yeah, because it's entirely triggered by Donald Trump's ridiculous tariffs regime that he is implementing. It's not like this was, I don't know, the previous administration's actions, unless the argument is that like Joe Biden did mind control or something. Joe Biden did mind control to Donald Trump to make him do the tariff stuff. Yeah, never forget the House number 30% rule.
Blame if there is, in fact, a recession.
Harry Anton, thank you very much.
Thank you.
John Berman.
All right, with us now is Canadian businessman, CNBC contributor Kevin O'Leary. He's also the chairman of O'Leary Ventures. Kevin, great to see you this morning. You just saw that stat right there, that more than half of Americans would blame Trump if there is a recession. I know you're sitting in Canada this morning. Would you blame Trump if there were a recession?
Well, let me just say that we've been talking about recession now for 4 years in a row, you may recall. Forecasters of recessions have been wrong for 4 years straight. So probabilities of 32 to 55%, that's interesting, but we are not in a recession right now. It really depends on how long these tariff wars go on for. I mean, it's widely assumed right now that the Euro.
Wait, last week this bald piece of shit was talking about how we need to do a 10,000% tariffs on China. He said